The effort in Cincinnati, I don't know if that would be termed workmanlike or methodical. You could put a lot of positive spins on it from an offensive standpoint. There's little to take from it from a defensive standpoint that would be negative. The offense, you can go one way or the other, but it obviously wasn't explosive, decisive. There wasn't necessarily a statement made by the offense, but we did know that the Bearcats had a strong defensive front. So, what are your initial takeaways?
Yeah, I think Mark, when you at least this way for me, even from a basketball perspective, being a coach and then just kind of watching it, being a fan and just an observer, I think it's always not quite when you rewatch the game again. It's always not quite as bad as what you thought it was initially when you look through it, and so I think that's very much the case here. Now, when you look at it, just kind of at a macro level, you look at, okay, 20 points. That's not probably not going to get it done in the Big 12. That's not, that it's not what you're looking for. And I think certainly that's correct. But I think, it's one story if, Oklahoma only scored 20 points and they struggled to score those 20 points. However, I think very optimistic for Oklahoma fans watching this game is they left probably a good 21 to 24 points on the field. Dillon Gabriel had a fumble near the goal line. There, he missed a couple of throws down the middle of the field. A couple of them would have been touchdowns there. So there was a lot of opportunities that were missed that they left on the field, I think. So I think you take that as a positive, but also at the same time there's certain aspects of the offense that absolutely have to be better. There is it's kind of funny to kind of talk through, but there's a very much like it was last year. There is a war on social media amongst Oklahoma fans. There's the group that says, um, Dillon Gabriel is so much more improved than he was a year ago. He's completing passes at a very, very high level. He's still, even with Saturday, he's in the 80% range in terms of completion percentage, is one of the top quarterbacks in the country as far as that goes. But there was you saw a little bit of a reversion in terms of missing some open guys, making some bad decisions. So at times, not completely bad decisions. There was a couple of times where he kept the ball instead of giving it off on his own replay. There was just a completely head scratching awful play where he's under pressure and he basically like dumps the ball behind the line. Thankfully, it goes out of bounds because it would have been a turnover if Cincinnati would have recovered it. And so I think it's kind of a split situation, Mark, where you have, I think you have a half of the fan base thinks, okay, like when is enough? Are we going to see Jackson Arnold get an opportunity? And then there's a half of the fan base. The more, I would say, and I apologize if you're in the first half, the more logical fan base that says, okay, they're just a little bit off on some things, and that will hopefully improve. So, he reminds me, Mark, and I've had a couple of fans that I'm close with, and a couple of people really close to the situation. He very much is Landry Jones, like reincarnated, in the fact that Landry was one of those guys, and he's the all-time leading passer at the University of Oklahoma, and he's probably going to be that for quite some time because he played and started for a good 4 years, right? I mean, you just don't see that happen in this day and age. Kids aren't 4-year starters at the quarterback position. They're leaving early for the NFL or whatever it might be. So, but in the same mode, he's a guy that, and Gabriel is just like this. He can be very consistent for games and quarters, and then all of a sudden the inconsistency is there. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, they just need him to be a little bit more consistent in hitting those open guys, making the solid decisions. And it seems to be when he's a little bit more in a pressure cooker when things like that happen. So I'm going to be very interested, Mark, to see how he. And I say bounce back, like, he certainly didn't have an awful game, but when you look at some of the throws that he missed that left some of those points on the board, it'll be, this could have looked a lot more impressive. This could have, even if you connect on a couple of those, if you look at 34-6 versus 20-6. So